In this video, we thought we'd let you get to know us a little bit so that when we give tips, tricks, advice, and techniques for improving your life using meditation, mindfulness, positive affirmations, and self-talk, you'll know where we're coming from. We're just two regular guys who've had some success in dealing with the vagaries of life throughout our lives. So welcome to the video. So welcome everybody, I'm here with John and we're going to make sure that our phones are turned off, which I've just done now. No interruptions. We want to make sure that we're giving you full attention, and we hope you will give us full attention as well as we talk about some of the things that will help you to move on in your life the way we have in ours. Hey John, that's a good starting point, I think. So we've both moved on in our lives in different ways. Where would you say you are right now in your life? Good place, bad place, in between?
Oh, I'm definitely at what I would call the best place. And as you
Yeah,
know very well, I've been through some pretty dark tunnels on this path.
yeah. Let me take these off.
But I like to say that I wouldn't be who I am if I haven't been through what I've been through, and I like who I am, so no regrets, right? I
Yeah.
don't do regret. I do making amends. If I make a mistake and I
Mhm.
need to make up for it or
Yeah,
compensate somebody for some damage or mistake that I've done, I try my best to do that. I
yeah,
apologize when I get things wrong, but I don't do regret because I don't think regret is healthy and I
no,
don't think it is beneficial in any way. Thrashing myself over a mistake I made years ago
mm.
rather than learning from it, doing my best to make up for it and moving on and trying not to make that mistake again, I just do not see any benefit in that
Mm.
kind of behavior. And so I don't do regret. But I've been through some dark tunnels. It's
Yeah.
taught me a lot. I'm in a good place in life now. And that's it.
That's kind of a great point to start, I think, because so many people do have regrets. They beat themselves up for a lifetime and they get trapped in a cycle. So we have this sort of vicious cycle that we talk about, and there's a virtuous cycle or circle, if you prefer. And I think many people, most people probably, end up kind of beating themselves up about things that could have been better. And I heard something the other day, which is that this present moment is the only thing where you can really make a change. Yesterday's gone, absolutely gone. You cannot change it. You cannot change the past. You can change right now, and that, of course, will change your future. If you do something different today, you get a different result down the line. But I think that point you make about no regrets is a good one because so many people don't know how to do that. Now, just, I like to throw you curveballs. So were you born doing that naturally? Because you said you had dark moments, and so did I. But was it something you learned by accident? Did you actively seek it? How did you come to this realization that the past is ancient history? You can't change it. Learn from it, sure. Make amends where necessary, as you said, but don't let it beat you up for the rest of your life. What prompted that for you? Without going into personal details, if you don't want to share them.
Sure, brick wall, this head, lots of banging against it. That is what taught me that. I was raised in a highly conservative family.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with people who choose an extremely conservative lifestyle because I think people should do what is best and what fits best for them and their value system.
Yeah.
But it didn't work for me, and I didn't know that for the first 37 years of life. Like I didn't know that I didn't really fit. Some parts of it I fit very well with. They meshed very well. Others
Yeah.
were terribly uncomfortable and out of sorts with my personal value system. And so
Yeah.
I had regrets all the time because I was taught that guilt and regret, that these things were healthy, that they pleased God for you to be that way. And I believed it because when you're raised to believe a thing, the
Yeah.
psychology of what you're raised to believe is very strong. And so it stayed with me for a long time. But enough bloody bangs against that wall finally woke me up. Like, I like how Dr. Phil puts it. He says, if what you're doing isn't working, do something else, right? And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so obvious when you say it out loud.
Yeah.
but it's true. So I
Yeah.
finally realized, you know what? I just need to do something else. And I still carry some of those values that I had in the past, but the ones that don't fit anymore, I don't try to force that square peg into that round hole anymore, which only caused me pain and only caused me misery and the regret and the guilt that prevented me from moving forward.
There's a
Ultimately,
couple of things. Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, just last thing, the thing that taught me where I was going wrong is actually what you're talking about, the present moment. When I
Yeah.
started to read about and practice mindfulness meditation and understand the present moment, what it meant, and how being mindful about the things I do can make for change that is positive without guilt and regret and all the pain that comes with it. That is what it changed my worldview. It really changed my worldview, changed my life to look at things differently. And I came out of that dark tunnel.
There's a couple of things you said there that are really interesting. One is that you were given a set of beliefs and values, which I think is true of most people. Parents, with the best of intentions in the world, will want to put their values onto their children. Um, I do. I know. I can't help it. I'm a parent. I want to steer them what I think is the right way. But those views are secondhand, and I wonder how many of us would wear somebody else's. Forgive me for this. Somebody offered you some used underwear. Would you feel comfortable in it? No, no. Why do we feel comfortable with secondhand values and belief systems, where in most cases we don't examine them critically, either for the culture we're in, and we'll talk about culture in a moment, or for us personally? You talked about the square peg and the round hole and so on. The fit for an individual is actually very unique. And I think we all have to discover that for ourselves. It's good to have some guiding light, of course, but we're handed it down. It's not a genetic thing. It's just a cultural thing. It's the nature and nurture kind of thing. So the nurture that we have forms our opinions and beliefs. So just as an example, in my family, because we were, like you, we weren't a rich family. And my family, a few years before I got to sort of working age, early working age, which was probably about 16. So a few years before then, my family actually told me my salary expectation levels. So if you look at the entire range of salary expectations, theirs were down here, and they put mine one step below. That actually proved not to be accurate over my lifetime when I realized that their ceiling was not mine, and neither was it of those who employed me, which is even more important. I realized that actually that belief wasn't helpful. It held me back. But at the time, it was a belief that seemed to be true. So you had this 37 years, you said before, you had this sort of epiphany, and the mindfulness helped you to that. In my case, I think it was similar, maybe about 35, 36, my age when that happened. So I've been doing this a bit longer than you. But the difference between us is one of the reasons that I think we can help people, because we have a wider scope of views, because we're not the same people. We have different lifestyles, different cultural expectations. We live in different countries. We're fairly different ages. From your point of view, how does that mesh together into a cohesive whole that we can help other people with? Because these are two very distinct things, and yet we have a certain commonality in our core.
Well, two things. One, it helps that we have worked together for a very long time. This is what, 16 years, is it? Is that the right
In
number?
April, 16 years.
Yeah, a long time now.
Yeah.
So we know each other very well. But even before, when we first started to work together, we've always meshed really well. Like, we've been on the same page about most things most of the time. And I think with human beings, you can't ask for better than that. Most of the time to be on the same page, that's pretty darn good. So that's always helped. But because you live in a different country, have a different cultural background, you are older than I am, so you have a generational difference than I do. All of those things that you know from your experiences have always helped when we discussed whatever it was we were doing in our business or personal life.
Yeah.
And the same is true of me. I'm younger, but my cultural background is different. My experience is different. And it's been very helpful that we bring our different sets of knowledge and experience to the table, but we think in a similar way. And so
Yeah.
we see eye to eye most of the time. And so rather than our knowledge and experience causing conflict, it's actually always improved the outcomes of anything that we were trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And it's a very common adage, but it's true that you should always surround yourself with like-minded people. Not that you should live in an echo chamber, but
No.
that you need people who support what you're doing and who think the way you think about that particular thing, but bring their own knowledge and experience to the table, and you're not afraid for them to push back a little bit when they think you're wrong about something. You don't want yes men standing around always telling you you're right. You don't want
No.
that. But
Yeah.
you do want people who are going down the path you're going and have similar goals as you have,
Yes.
because that ultimately will make your outcome and theirs far better than if you were with someone that you're constantly working against or at odds with. And when you work for someone else, sometimes you don't have a choice and you just have to learn to deal with that. But in our
Yeah.
case, we've been very fortunate that we have always seen things on the same page.
Well, that makes me think of something. By the way, I'm hearing explosions outside. There's building work going on just over there. I hope that doesn't pick up on the microphone, but if it does,
I'm not hearing it over here, so I don't know.
oh,
if
that's
that-
good. That's a good sign. There are two ways two fists can meet. You know, and the other way is this is strong, right? This is strong. You can have a confluence of ideas, or you can have a loggerhead. And I think the way I would perceive what you've described to me, and I know because we've done this for so many years, is that where there's a gap in my thinking, generally speaking, almost always you don't have that gap. Sometimes if there's something you're not quite sure of, I might think of it. And between the two of us, we kind of fill in the little gaps here and there, which is great. And that makes me think that for most people, and I really believe this is true, there isn't a single way to achieve what they want. There are multiple ways that can actually benefit them, but they have to find the voice or voices that will resonate with them. And of course, we're hoping that our voices will resonate with lots of people. And it may be that we're not for them, in which case they need to seek out somebody else. But we have a particular kind of style, if you like, or flavor, and that will suit some people. In fact, I've been reading a book, I think I told you about it the other day, about gut health and how the microbiome makes a big difference to your health. There's some fascinating information. I know you're into health as well. One of the things that this particular scientist, this doctor, says is that although we have a very core humanity where everybody's pretty much the same, when you get down to the individual level, what works for A may not work for B, and the differences can be subtle or they can be quite big. And so I think we would encourage people to find that which suits them. And if that's us, wonderful. If it's not, then keep looking, because, you know, there's an old saying, all roads lead to Rome. Well, yeah, okay. Just pick the one that's nearest to you and the easiest for you to follow. Why make life hard? And some of these mindfulness exercises, meditation techniques, self-improvement journeys can be really difficult. I know you've done a lot of them. I've done a lot of them too. And some of them just leave me cold. I'm sure you've had the same experience. And others just click. And it's like you get that square peg, you get a square hole, and it just slots in. And it makes sense. When it makes sense, it's easy, right? It's easy. Everything's easier. You get this kind of impetus and momentum that makes it possible to go further in what you're doing. We did make some notes. I'm going to have a quick look in case we've missed anything. So we talk about that. There's a question. I want to throw it out to you. I've got my own answers, but we've both studied philosophy, religion, ancient wisdoms, all that kind of thing. And I know in our conversations, we always notice that this bit of mysticism or philosophy or religion is like this and like this. And then we draw dot to dot, and we find that the fundamentals are expressed everywhere, right? Why? Why would they be expressed in so many different ways? And some of them would say that they are oppositional. They're not, because they're saying the same thing in different languages. It seems to me like that's kind of a natural human condition. These things are, if you like, part of the law of physics. Not literally, but, you know, they inform the way humanity is. We have a certain set of parameters that define how we behave, how we react. Psychologists would tell you that. In fact, in the UK, there's an entire department that uses psychology to nudge, it's called the nudge unit, the way people behave. And they use all kinds of techniques, psychological techniques, that they know will work with most people. So we have these fundamental paradigms, as it were. So what's your take on that?
Well, for me, I think the reason why people often talk past each other rather than to each other is because of our tribal nature,
Yeah,
because we are tribal by nature. We want to belong to the group, we want to
yeah,
fit into the group, we want to be well thought of in the group, and we view other groups as an opposition or a threat, even when they're not. Now, in the past, of course, maybe the other group was a threat because when we were in a tribal setting, the other group might be a physical, violent threat to our existence. Whereas today, most of what we perceive as a threat is only a threat up here, it's only a threat in our mind. But our psychology hasn't changed. It hasn't been long enough. We haven't been in the great civilizations long enough for that psychology to change. And so we still view other groups as being a threat to ourselves when they're really not. And so people will change the wording of whether it's their religion, their code of ethics, whatever, different languages, they'll change the words they use to describe what essentially are the same things because they want their group to stand separate from the other. And that sometimes it's nefarious. Sometimes, like the group I came out of, it was nefarious. They changed the meaning of words and the language they used so that if you tried to go to another group, you would feel lost and wouldn't fit in because you wouldn't understand. You know the meaning of the words they're using, but all of the nuance surrounding it's very different. So some of it's just our tribal nature. We, by nature, view other groups as being in opposition to us, even if they're not. And other times we've been conditioned that way by our leaders, and I put that in quotes, our leaders, because they want to maintain control over us by managing the way we think so that we always see other groups as an opposition. And you see that often in the media when you see like governments or politicians or countries that are always at odds with each other. And I've been to many, many countries in my life, countries that I have heard other people in the media from politicians say, oh, those people are bad. And then you go over there and you meet those people and you're like, they're just people. They have families, they have kids, they're trying to put food on the table, they're trying to, send their kids to school, get an education, they want the best for each other. The only people I've learned that are really in opposition to each other are the people on top. And that's an important lesson that I learned coming out of the group that I was in. Once you realize that's true, then you stop seeing everyone as an adversary, even when you have a difference with them. They're no longer your adversary, they're just someone you don't happen to agree with on this particular thing. And that makes all the difference in the world.
That goes back to your point, excuse me, that surround yourself with the people you want to be. Because if you're surrounded by the wrong people, it's very difficult to break away from that influence. In fact, I forget the term, but scientists, social scientists and psychologists talk about this effect. Excuse me. I'll cut that bit out. And they talk about this effect where they've done tests and they have 5 actors in a classroom giving the wrong answer, and the one person who's the subject of the test finds it almost impossible to give the correct answer, which they know to be correct, because of the societal pressure from this other group, who are actors as part of the experiment. And so whoever you surround yourself with is going to have a major impact on what you do. If you don't have a good support network, locally, family, whatever it may be, one of the things I've found over the years is that it's perfectly okay to surround yourself with people who are either dead or were famous in history in some way, or currently living and you'd like to be around, but for various reasons you can't. I'm not likely to be best friends with Tony Robbins anytime soon, but I can see from his public persona and what he publishes, what he's like, what his values are, what he states his values are. Richard Branson, in terms of business, for example, he's a UK business guy, very famous, invented the Virgin brand. He has a particular ethos for his business empires. I don't need to be his best friend to surround myself with his ideals. And we do this through podcasts, video, reading, that kind of a thing. What about you? Have you surrounded yourself physically with people, or have you done it by reading or inspiration elsewhere?
As an introvert myself, I don't keep a lot of close friends, just a few very tight-knit close friends. And so most of the people I surround myself with are virtual people, either through what I consume in terms of books, audio, videos, podcasts, or through the work that I do in connecting with people online that are also in that same subset. And that's a wonderful thing about modern technology, is that even if where you live, there aren't many people who are going down the same path you're going today, out there somewhere, there is a group, probably a substantial group of people who do collect together in some virtual community to support and encourage each other, whatever it is. Like, for instance, I started a different kind of a workout a few months back, and the workout system that I use has a thriving online support community where people are happy to give each other tips and advice and help and what worked for them. Whatever it is that you're into, your people are out there. And if you're like me and you're an introvert and you don't want a big group of people in your physical presence very often, I prefer maybe just a person or two at a, private setting to a big group of people. You can do that now. Like, it's no longer necessary for you to put up with the big party to talk to that one person that you actually, click with. So there's a lot of benefit to that. And I've certainly benefited from it. We met that way. Yeah. We've only been together in person a few times because we live across a very large
pond. For a few hours. That's literally, in 16 years, a few hours.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And yet our communication, thousands of hours of communication.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think that's great because, I find that the same thing. I wouldn't feel comfortable having a big physical network. And I think for anybody who may not have that, the good news is you don't have to have that. So you can surround yourself with the right people, even if you don't. I'll give you an example. He probably wouldn't like me saying it, but he's not going to hear this, so it's okay. My brother tells me this all the time. You're the sum average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. That's the kind of social science idea. Okay. He cannot find 5 people in his real life that he wants to surround himself with. However, he hasn't yet twigged that he can do that virtually. Even though I've told him, he hasn't quite made that leap. So he still bemoans the fact that he would like that support network, and he can't find it because the people he works with and associates with are not necessarily the people who can take him from where he is now to where he would like to be, or help him on that journey. And he would help them in the same way, but he can't find them. Excuse me. So that's a difficulty he encounters in real life, which can be solved in the virtual space. As you said, there's tons of communities for almost anything. Whatever your particular thing may be, there tends to be a community. And if there isn't one, then you can make one yourself, or you can invent one. And it can be purely imaginary. You can study the lives of some famous people and see what their values were, how they behaved with difficult circumstances.
I have something to say about that because it's very true. Depending on the size of the town you live in, my wife and I, because we left, like I told you, it was a small conservative religious group. It was international, but very small in comparison to most other big religions. And she wanted to start a meetup group for other people who have left this conservative religious group. And we had no idea how many people were going to show up in this town. We live in a mid-sized town of about 250,000 people, which that's not small, but that's not a mecca. It's not the big cities, right? And so she just posted something on meetup.com. No advertising, nothing, just nothing. Our biggest group, we had like 36 people show up. There were too many people for the restaurant that we all met at to hang out with. So you just don't know. If a town the size of 250,000 people can get like 30 people in this fringe religious group into one place at the same time. Imagine how many people you could get, even if you could only get those 5, for whatever it is, whatever topic it is that you're interested in. I bet you there's people in your town who are thinking the same thing as you right now. I wonder if there was some way for me to meet up with other people like me. There is. It's possible, and it works. We did it.
Yeah. That's another interesting point, because many people will long for that kind of connection, but take no positive action to enable it. So, all these people, you can almost see the thought bubbles if you imagine them looking down on their houses. Thought bubbles. I wish I could reach out. I wish somebody would reach out to me to make connection. That person can be you. It doesn't have to be the other person. You can be the one to make to reach out. You said something earlier, which I want to just go back to for a moment. You don't regret everything that came before because it's made you who you are today. And your battle scars, if you want to think of it that way, do determine who you are. You can learn from the things that happen to you, whether they're good or bad. And we've seen some examples, in the news of people who go through very difficult life circumstances and turn it round and do great good with it. And there's a line, I wish I'd looked this up. There's a line in one of the Shakespeare plays, and I cannot remember the exact line. It's something like, nothing is good or bad except thinking makes it so. Whatever happened to you, you can turn into something positive for the future. You can reframe the experience if you choose to. You don't deny that something bad happened, or untoward, or not pleasant, or not as good as you would have liked, but you can turn it into something good for now and the future. And that reframing is extremely powerful. We talk about more about that in the future in some of the lessons that we're doing, because it's an extremely powerful. And I know you've done this kind of thing, reframing previous experiences. Is there any example? My dogs are barking. I think that explosive building work is making them scared. But it's real life, what can you do? And I'm going to reframe that later, because that will be, this is one of those things. We're just real, regular guys, right? We're not these gurus who are pretending to be somebody we're not.
That's right.
I've got dogs that bark sometimes. I have a home life. So do you. Things happen. But we want to put this out, so we're not going to redo this. If the dog barks, the dog barks. Is there anything you can share about that sort of reframing experience?
I actually have a very good example of that. Like, people who go through difficult marriages and divorces often regret, I wish I had never married that person, blah, blah, blah. And I understand why you might think like that. Having been through a very difficult, contentious first marriage, where we were married inside the very conservative religious group, and there was a limited pool of people to choose from, but you were supposed to marry people who believed like you did, and all those things. And I was married to her for 14 years because one of the things about the conservative group was that no divorce. Very, very rarely would divorce be looked upon in any way but extremely negatively, which affects your social standing and just everything. So I was married for 14 years the first time. And you could say, what a waste of time. You could have found the person you were happy with, etc. But here's the thing. Had I not gone through the first 14 years with that person I was very poorly matched with, that trial by fire made me into the kind of person that was ready for the next person that I met afterwards, my current wife. We have a wonderful relationship. It has been everything I hoped for in the first marriage. But if I had met her back then, I would not have been the person I am today. Who would be ready for that relationship, and it would have gone badly. So it took that trial, that long, difficult time period, to get to the point where I was the kind of man that would be the right kind of partner for my present wife. And now that's the kind of reframing I think everybody should learn, Because if you don't look at the things you've been through and see, I learned all these things from going through that difficult time in my life that made this circumstance I'm in now much better. If you can't do that, you will be a constant bundle of regret for the past. But I'm here to tell you the past only exists in one place, up here.
Yeah.
It has no existence outside of your mind. It's not real. It's an illusion. It's gone. So the only thing that's real is the present moment you're in right now. So it's up to you to frame that past in a positive or negative light. That's not to say that everything always has some positive benefit, but if you learn to always look for the positive benefit of the bad things that happened in the past, your future will be much brighter because you'll be ready for the things that come at you from the lessons that you've learned.
You'll be ready for the things that come at you from the lessons you've learned. That's a takeaway point. It really is. We've only got a couple of minutes left because we wanted to keep this to a short thing. But I will tell you something about one of my early experiences with religion. I had a parent who had this religion and a parent who had that religion. Interracial couple. This parent said you're wrong. This parent said you. This religion said they're wrong. This religion said they're wrong. What it taught me, what I took away from that, is that the certainty of their belief was not the same as the accuracy and correctness of their belief. You can believe something deeply within you and be 100% wrong. Now, as it happens, because they loved each other, they kind of allowed the religions to take back seats. But their religions were antagonistic. And it would have been very unusual for people of those religious persuasions to get along normally in normal life. Something bigger and more powerful came along to move the religions out of the way. That was love. And what you're talking about with your second wife is the same thing. You can appreciate what you have now more because you didn't have it before. It's almost like light and shade. You can't appreciate the light unless you've had dark. And I think
not just an inability to appreciate it. Not just, well, I appreciate my current wife now because my last one was so contentious. That is true. But also, I wouldn't be the person ready for the new experience had I not gone through the one in the past. An analogy for that is, let's say you lift weights. You can't go straight to the 250-pound bench press, right? You can't do that. You have to work up to that. There's a lot of pain between the start of working out all the way to the point where you can do the really tough stuff. It's like, I like the way Mark Wahlberg puts it. It's much easier to stay in shape than get in shape. And that's very true. So when you go through these difficult things, sometimes they really make you stronger and refine you in a way that makes you ready to carry the experiences that are coming at you. And if you hadn't gone through those things, you wouldn't have your sea legs, so to speak, and it might just knock you over whenever it came through, and you wouldn't be able to benefit from it or benefit the other person or the situation that you find yourself in. So yes, it grew my appreciation for sure, but more than that, it made me ready for something I can appreciate.
I'm going to ask you a question, then I want you to ask me the same question, and then we'll probably close. Would you change, given a magic wand or a wish or 3 wishes or whatever, would you change anything that's happened in your previous life? If you were able to, would you change anything?
I can't say that there's anything I would, even if something's popped to mind. And the simple reason why is the butterfly effect. I don't know what that little thing being changed, what repercussions that might have. And I love where I'm at right now. And I would hate to have messed that up by wanting to go back and surgically carve out some moment that I thought was negative at the time. So no, I don't think there's anything I would. How about you? Would you change anything?
Absolutely not one thing. I wouldn't. And I've seen enough time travel shows to know about the butterfly effect, and you change this one thing and the ripple effect. If you look at I love movies. Back to the Future. You see what happens when Marty McFly messes with the past and when he comes back to the alternate timeline. No, I wouldn't change anything because it's made me who I am today. I like to think I'll be better tomorrow and the day after, so I look forward to better things more and more in the future. But I like where I am today, and I could not have been here without all the things that stacked up in the past to bring me to this particular journey. Even the side detours, the wrong turns and everything else ended up here. So as you were saying with the butterfly effect, it would have changed things in ways you cannot possibly imagine. In fact, there's an old story. We'll tell it another time when I look it up properly. It's about a Japanese village where something happens, they say that's good, and no, it's bad because this. Oh, well, that's bad, no, it's good because. And each thing that happens, they reframe within the story, because what comes next depended on that first item, that first thing. And so what seems bad now could lead to great things in the future, but what seems good now might lead to something terrible in the future. So I would not change a thing at all. No, same as you. So closing thoughts, John.
Well, I think that if people can learn to accept what they've been through, even if you didn't like it, it wasn't fun, but if you can accept it and that it made you who you are, and move forward and remember that that past only exists up here, so you get to choose what to do with it, and that's your power. You get to choose whether to keep that past continuously causing you problems, or whether you can let it go, or whether you can learn from it. It's entirely up to you what you do. I chose to learn from it, to move forward, and to appreciate that it's brought me to the point that I'm at. And I hope that you, whoever's watching this, can learn to do the same.
You don't have to like what happened, but you do get to choose how you react to it. Another wonderful takeaway point, and one which I agree with. Absolutely perfect. And I think that's the perfect place to end. So thank you for joining us, everybody. We'll see you on the next one. We'll talk about reframing in future episodes. So, John, see you later. And thanks to the audience for joining us. Bye now.
Sounds good. Talk to you later, Amy.